Thank you, Gabriel, and a warm welcome from me. Thank you for coming out, and not just out, but making this a point of destination on your journey. I'm going to be navigating, I'm already liking this sort of metaphor that's going on about windows. Gabriel said windows, I think that might play a part as well, and the idea of moving through space. So we're thinking about landscape, and we have 3 different artistic projects, artistic research projects that deal with landscape in different ways. And my name is Alice Legay, although I've wondered today whether I might start saying Lachai to get in tune with my Dutch roots. I suppose I identify as a philosopher, but I'm an occasional co-supervisor, external co-supervisor in the PhD world of Akbar artistic research over the last couple of years, getting to know the particular format and also the particular question of what makes artistic research is a question that we keep returning to, sometimes with bewilderment and frustration, and sometimes with moments of clarity. And I hope today we might generate a few of these moments of bewilderment, as well as perhaps clarity. It's in fact the artists who came together around this notion of landscape who invited me to think alongside with them and to sort of think about how to devise an evening. And so together we wondered, they're very different projects, and we wondered what could be a kind of red thread that connects them. And how can we think this red thread, but in a way that doesn't force a connection, that somehow keeps it open and undetermined. And perhaps because of projects that I'd worked on before, or that also are derived from the projects themselves, as you will soon see. I don't mean to speak cryptically, but we came to this idea that what we want to do is somehow find a mode of exposing the methods, exploring, exposing, discovering, rendering explicit some of the methods of artistic research in a way that present themselves in itself as a kind of modular, contingent spread. So the idea of a spread of methodologies brought us to the idea of cards. You spread a deck of cards. And this reminded me of projects that I've done in the past, including a project with Anke Hamann on speculative design, where we also used the concept of a kind of contingency of cards, a shuffling of cards, a reshuffling of cards, as a device as a tool for reflecting and analysing our own method. And not just reflecting and analysing our own method, but also questioning our own sort of agency and signature in the work that we do. Because it's one thing to assume that everything we do is deliberate, but is it always true? Especially in an artistic research context, often we're sort of embarking on a journey not quite knowing where it's going to go, and then we're being surprised or interrupted or held up or somehow triggered by something that might become an idea. And the question is, how can that be a method? What does it mean to think about that as a method, or in terms of one of multiple methods? So we've devised together, thinking about cards was only a short jump to thinking about the tarot. And we thought about, is there a way in which tarot cards, I don't know how many of you might be familiar with tarot, I'm sure many of you are, because it's one of my little personal discoveries, is that wherever I go, we don't talk about it much in academia at all, although increasingly so. There's a bigger exhibition at the Abbey Warburg Institute in London at the moment, incidentally. But we don't talk much about magical expertise in science, but it is actually everywhere. And the more I talk to people, just, by chance on a train, invariably they bring out their tarot cards or their anecdotes about tarot cards. So I'm assuming some knowledge, and I can see already in your eyes and in your energy that you know that I know that we are sharing a secret somehow. And then there are those who don't know, who think, what is this? What is this? What is this talk about tarot cards? And I hope that will become clear in the course of the evening. So any deck of cards has 4 suits, right? And in a tarot deck, we have the wands, we have the swords, we have the cups, and we have... Which is it? Pentacles. The pentacles, thanks. Okay, so the pentacles stand for everything that is material manifestation, which of course, you know, is obvious when we're dealing in not just in artistic practice, but in, I would like to say, in any kind of theoretical practice too. You've got some material base, whether it's the book or the pen or the typewriter or the software. You've got something that is manifesting, or the body. And so that all those things that relate to the body, or not so much the body, but yet to the manifestation of thought and inspiration, would be related to the pentacles. Then you've got the wands, and the wands stand for inspiration, creative drive. And you have the swords that stand for intellectual, rational, deliberate sort of knowledge, the deciphering, the distinctions between differences. That's everything that's related to the rational with the swords. So I've said swords, I've said wands. The cups would be the 4th category, and the 4th category is everything that is emotional, basically. I'm keeping it simple for today. But anything that is driven by a drive to want, to desire, to need, you know, to not be satisfied until I get it. That's sort of the kind of something that is also driven by the heart. So you have all these different aspects of knowledge, actually, or of being in the world, that can be sort of seen as like the primary colours and mixed in infinite varieties for each and every different project. And becoming aware of that, using the cards as a way of reflecting those tendencies, those powers that are evolved in any kind of creative process, has become quite an interesting tool. So we set about, this is the wonderful thing for a philosopher working with artists, is that you don't just discuss things, they become manifest straight away. And the 3 artists here, it felt like in a jiffy, had already created their own tarot cards, which I'm, you know, bowled over by, and of course they come in a golden envelope. And here they are. And these are the cards that we're going to be using this evening as we navigate through the different projects. And I'll show you, this is just one instance of how we might use them. And we're experimenting with it. It's a sort of first premiere, a kind of experiment that could also go wrong. We might be bewildered by the end of it rather than gained any clarity. But so we haven't quite done a whole deck, as any of the amateurs here will know, or the professionals indeed. They'll know that our full deck of tarot consists of 76 cards. We have decided, for our benefit, to stick with the notion of a cycle, the notion of a journey, the notion perhaps of multiple cycles involved in every artistic project. And so we've gone with the 22 cards that constitute the major arcana, including the protagonist embodied by the Fool. So the Fool goes on this journey, and there are 21 stations that are depicted in this beautiful tarot card deck that we will now use. So, you don't need to understand or remember all that. It will become clear as we use it, and we'll use it in different ways for each different project that we navigate. And we are here in itself in a kind of labyrinthine building that I'm discovering for the first time today. And our first station will be basically in the catacombs. So we are going to go down, like in the myth of Inanna, we go down, hopefully before coming back up again. So there will be 3 stations, one location for each artistic research project, and the first one is down in the garage. So I'm going to ask you to follow me in a minute, and then we'll see what happens. The second one will be in the auditorium, and the third one will be in the library. So, sounding a little bit like a Cluedo game, but nobody is going to be hurt. So, have I forgotten anything important? No. Okay. So we're moving down along the corridor and down the stairs. Don't get lost. I'm told there's an interrogation room somewhere down there. I wouldn't like to know what's in there. So let's move this way.
Of course there is.
I'm going to go slowly because people might want to think about, as we walk, what we think could possibly be the relationship between artistic research and the principles of chance, for example. Yeah, but it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it's like a productive.
So please make your way into the room. Don't be shy. Stand well clear of the tripod of the camera, that's all. So to give you some brief orientation, this is the first window into a landscape, and we intend to be here for about 20 minutes. I think that's helpful to just know, because it's also a bit chilly in here. So I'm going to hand over straight away to Alex Cromer.
Hello, I'm a voice, which is really funny as a research course in the PhD. But I'm going to, if you don't mind, experiment with other ways of using my voice.
So maybe this works. Please feel free to grab a chair. You can unroll this, like Italy. No. Okay. So I was reflecting on this, losing my own voice. And it's a strange thing, because how can I lose voice in the first place? Was my voice even ever mine? I like to consider voice as a collection of experiences of the past. The political and what is socio-economic environments moving through. And our parents too, and our friends, and our culture. And these things determine how we voice. So to say that I lost my voice that wasn't ever truly mine to begin with is a funny thing to say indeed. Like some kind of snapshot of the past and the things that we have been through, how could that ever truly be lost? So I think today I would like to infect you with my voice, if possible. I have a microphone here. And as questions arise, I will ask someone to answer them for me. Don't worry, I have the answers here. Does that sound good?
Does that mean we're ready for a question, Alex?
It's a question. Maybe basis. No, you know what? I'm not going to tell you. I'll leave surprises to be surprised. Yes, first question.
Can I ask one of you to maybe shuffle the cards?
Yeah.
So the card that was drawn is the Empress. I must have let you have a little look. Does this card speak to you?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. When I first saw it, I wanted to get it as a tattoo.
You know, it stands for Mother Earth. She's a kind of goddess. She's also a yes encourager. She's the one that gives you the sort of, not the impulse, but, you know, the support that you need to pursue whatever it is you're pursuing. She's the principle, the very principle of creativity. So one of the questions we thought, in association with the Empress, would be, you know, if you had to thank the earth for providing the material, or for providing that which allowed you to acquiesce to the sustenance of this project, how would you formulate this gratitude?
Good question, I have a thing.
Can I get a volunteer to answer for me? Did I see a hand? Don't be shy. I don't have a voice that I don't use. Anyone? Thank you. Also, you're missing. Can you just read this for me in that microphone?
The whole thing, huh?
The whole thing, it's not too long.
Sun is slower this morning, lazily stretching its warm golden arms over hills and valleys replete with clouds hung low in hiding. In due time he will come, but before that the present stillness held in the dawn's rosy fingertips. The peaks of rolling hills and mountains make themselves known to me. There is one here, and there is one in the distance, a slightly softer hue, and there's one before that, and another one beyond that one. They go on like this, on and on, until you can't see them anymore, quietly fading into the horizon. They draw you into their bosom, seduce you with such primordial undulations, always in sync with the indefinite rhythms of infinity. Dance with me, as the trees that cover you like a fur quiver at the touch of my breath, leaving like argent shards of jade, swaying to and fro, flickering in aurora's light, the ebb and flow of our hips, sweat and swelling humidity. I've been here before with you, so many times that I don't remember, just whispers of memories as old as bedrock. A cacophony of cicadas, frequencies of their fleeting romances sweep through your trees and burrow themselves into your soil, that keeper of sonic registries. Freshly fed fantasies erupt with every step. Before the Tennessee sun wakes and washes you out and away from me, before we both become baptized by its golden arms, which sting, which bite, which suffocate. Let me hear those layers of sedimented sound in my feet rise up to my fingertips, resonate in my body, caress my core.
Thank you.
I think that's hell.
The Empress?
Yeah. That is how I would describe it.
Well, thank you. Do you want another card?
Yeah, let's keep it going.
Do you want the next card to relate to the first card in a way?
I don't know. What do you think? Good answer. Nobody said yes. Yes, it should relate to the first card because Suzanne said it should.
Would you like to draw the card yourself this time around?
Sure.
So the card that you drew is the Hanged Man. You'll have a chance to see all these cards later if you like. Look at the card, Alex. What does it evoke for you?
David Bowie.
David Bowie?
Yeah. Mr. Smith.
Oh, of course.
We'll see.
Well, the Hanged Man generally stands for, or floats, or hangs, as it were, or symbolizes some kind of time out, some kind of giving oneself up, a kind of maybe an inability to decide between two things. It can also mean the death of the ego, some form of sacrifice involved in order to get this project done. Or going against the grain, letting go generally. Giving oneself up, getting over oneself in order to get this project done. So the question is, where and why did you get stuck in the process? And how might this have been crucial in the end? What did you have to listen to? Because the Hanged Man is the only tarot card with an ear.
That's a good question.
So I tried to arrange a few things here in order to answer a tackling from our guides. I have a sample of my daughter.
And that's my answer to this question.
Thank you, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us, or do you need another card?
I like the cards.
You like the cards?
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we ask someone to draw a card for you?
Yeah. Who would like to draw a card? You guys are very
Do you want
active.
to shuffle?
Very responsive audience. I like it. There's a lot of activity happening. Thanks, guys.
Oh, I'm drawing the card. Okay. Here we have Mulkata, the fool,
Oh,
the point of departure,
cool.
the fool. Have a look at the card. So the fool traditionally in tarot often stands, for the childlike naivety that sets you off in the first place. We're trying to get a grip of we're trying to get a kind of, maybe not a grip, but an insight into the artistic research aspect of your project here, Alex. And so with the state of innocence represented by the child, represented by the fool, we ask what leap of faith was required to embark on this journey. What did you believe before you started out? Or how would you characterize the carefree in relation to this project? I have certain ideas myself about this, but I'd like to know how you respond to this idea of the naive in your project. What is it that you set out to find without really knowing, whether you had the tools to do it?
Yeah, good question.
Ready? A body piece of mind
This is my dad.
overgrown within. It sprinkles breath away and withers slow, consumed by its own.
At some point in time, I was giving a rare promise,
All moves as one.
and I touched over the came up to me and told me that she could hear my ancestors speaking through me, even though she couldn't understand English so well. This is what launched the research, trying to figure out what voices outside the language, how was this constructed, and how deconstruct was made meaning from voice.
This is like the need of heaven to rise.
But that is cancer now. I don't think I'll be able to hear his voice for a very much longer live.
Burns you. Fairy tales are named up where in ghostly scar. Whirling into it, that deep dark cup, to slip from view, return in emerald waves. It sounds so true, like as in burrows speaks.
And I think
That holy man,
maybe
holy man is here.
the naivete maybe required is
Both of moon and light of winds.
maybe a bit ambivalent. To assume that voice is essential, that I have a voice in my father, while also to assume that voice is not essential, that my voice isn't mine, nor is it my father's.
The sanctity of
And I feel like this kind of belief system, which is always in tension, and it makes it difficult to maybe fully discuss voice
and yet
without deciding one way or the other.
there is a soul side of light and things. So rise and let thy hunger find you whole. When death comes to all, that let it find you here. The old know in I let it take me thus.
Thank you.
Are we ready to move on, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much.
So we're moving into the auditorium, which is back up the stairs, but not all the way up the stairs. Does that make sense?
They should start with like
Yeah. Oh, see, Dave. But you have the Russian script. Technically, but it's good. Yeah. Whatever.
because I did think of the online
Okay, so for this channel, yeah.
So I was only concerned with you.
Yeah.
So please feel free to enter into the room. Be aware that there is a projection over here that you might want to just avoid the lamp. And please be aware that there's a camera there you might want to avoid knocking over as well. Please come up into the room. And feel free to explore the installation or the exhibition. Come into the room and feel free to explore, making sure you try not to disturb the projection nor touch the camera. Thank you. So we're giving you a bit of time to explore the exhibition here, the three parts, what's on the table and what's projected on the walls. So when you enter into a space like this, at first I suppose it's a bit enigmatic, and we've thought about using this device, this tool, in order to perhaps underline the idea that, you know, we don't ever really get a vision of the whole thing or comprehension of the whole thing, but what we can do hopefully, is you know, create these little windows or these little, you know, peepholes in a way, in order to get an idea of what is going on. So, Ilaria Biotti, would you like to draw a card?
The hermit.
The hermit. Okay, so what do we have depicted on the card?
Well, I don't know how much you can say, but the hermit in our version is a person on a horse. We don't see the face. We see a journey. We see, even if it's a fixed image, we do see or intend movement. And the person is alone. It's a moment of solitude. It's a moment of being with your thoughts. It's a journey of solitude, I would say, as well.
Would you describe your own artistic project as something of a journey of solitude, or how does it resonate with this card?
It has, so in my journey, I have a very big component of, it starts with being part of a community, of being a member of a 900 people village on the northward border of Italy, and trying to understand what's being part of this community and what does this community imagine in connection to landscape. So there has been lots of engagement and conversations, but also a lot of stepping back and solitude, in this sense of trying to take a position in which I could find a distance to start asking questions instead of being fully immersed. So, this is my connection to the hermit. And I don't intend solitude as necessarily a feeling of being alone, but more a feeling of being immersed in thoughts, in a different headspace.
It's interesting in relation to a village of 900 people, you know, because that is a strong community, but it's also, you know, from another perspective, you could say it's a very isolated sort of location.
It's being isolated, but it's also never being alone, because it's this network of everybody knows each other, everybody is connected to one another. And actually, this was also a starting point of my research project. It was, I'm looking at how this village identified itself or imagined itself for the past century as being an ideal landscape. So with all the complexity and paradoxes that this might mean. And I started by thinking, how is it that we share this knowledge? Where is it? How does that work?
So one interpretation of the sort of archetypal figure of the hermit is that it is related to this notion of inner truth. And so we ask the question here, what does the project have to do with your innermost secret self? Can it be formulated? Can it be shared? Or would to share it be somehow to disturb it or to distort it? And in a way you've already answered, but the second question is, in what ways does solitude contribute or disrupt your working process? Because remember, we're interested in not just getting a grip of what the work, sort of the form that it takes, but but especially the process involved. So, how would you relate to that? Is there something unspeakable about this project? Too secret to share?
There is an anecdote that I often share when I present this project. Many of you have heard it before, but when I actually started to search for materials, okay, where do I look for documentation or information about my village being an ideal landscape? I started from a very academic research way of looking. So I went into libraries, I went to the local museum, I went into the local town hall, and I couldn't find anything. So at one point I was really thinking, okay, I made it up. It's something that doesn't really, it's not written anywhere. And then I thought to start to change my way of asking, and I wrote an email to the local information center. And what I asked was, I just started an email like in a polite way. So, hi, I hope this email finds you well, blah, 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 blah. And the answer I got was the very almost offended answer of saying, of course I'm well, I'm here. How am I supposed to be? And I said, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, is this certainty of being in an ideal landscape. And so I started to actually engage with community and people, and as I said, we're 900, so I basically know more or less everyone, and started to engage in conversations and asking, okay, so what is ideal? How is this place ideal? And an answer that I always got back, or most of the time, was look. And this made a change in how I was searching, because it was very much in images. So it was not about having a complex narrative of storytelling through words. It was look.
Evidence.
So it was sight.
Yeah.
It was looking around, and yeah. So what you see on your right side, this is the first attempt I made to detach the village, and according to the different stories that I was collecting, I started to film. And so you see different connections of how the village was constructed. And I did that, starting with moving images, in believing very much in this landscape as something alive, as something that was unstable. And the first attempt I made at composing, because I decomposed the landscape, and then I was, but it's what I see in images, it's something that is embedded in a composition. So, starting to work with spatial montage, I made a tableau. So a composition that it's moving and it keeps on changing in how the moving imaging combine. The sequences have different lengths, for example, and you can, this is a research catalog page for those who are familiar with it, so you can start or stop the sequences, so you have different combinations. And right now, what you see on the table is a second attempt to recompose and decompose as well. So in that case, I had been filming and then structuring a composition that then didn't change. And in the tarots, in both cases, I was trying to build an orientation system. So through the stories, create these stratifications of time through remaking images. So what you see in the tarot cards, the drawings of different sites in the village, and what the this type of montage allows me to do is to have something that it's not like the tableau that it's fixed, but it's like a table, like when you need to reset the table in order to be able to have dinner. So you have to set it and reset it in order for it to function. So the tarot card have this dimension of being, combination of images that then can be reset. And for me, this combination between these two ways of thinking about composition, it's a way to address how I was trying to approach this narrative of the village of being ideal. So something that is crystallized, something that it's stable, but at the same time it keeps on evolving and it keeps on changing. And right now I'm in this trying to understand this way of narrating.
Is there something that you'd like to know now?
Sure.
Would you like to ask the card a question rather than the card ask you a question?
I love that.
Then I think you better draw one.
The Hierophant. What?
The Hierophant.
Hierophant, sorry.
What do you see depicted?
Donna, I have to ask you for help with this.
Yeah. Well.
If in doubt, ask the artist.
Yeah. Let's put it this way.
One of the artists.
Two odd sculptures that seem to be disconnected are ultimately connected. So let's say boxes, stilts, and radar dishes in dialogue. And maybe if anybody knows the architect John Hajduk, they are inspired by his own buildings.
Maybe I can also say something about the background. So, at the end we're going to share the cards so you can have them in your hand, but for us was also important to have kind of a codification of what Alice was mentioning at the beginning of this flows of different ways of doing artistic research and asking questions also in connection to serendipity and feelings, and each color it's a different coding. So for example, the light blue is very much connected to spirituality and understanding, while yellow is more about clarity. And maybe something that it's very difficult to find in our cards, it's purple, that is the loss of ego. That is something really challenging.
So the Hierophant, often also called the Pope, is number 5 in the major arcana. And it stands for government, for school, for institution, for education, for maybe the harshness of some of those things, the rigidity of some of those things, but also the idea of aspiration and guidance and professional help. So the question we would ask would be, how is or was this work supported and accompanied or welcomed or not by the various institutions that you addressed or that were involved? I'm thinking of the university, obviously, but maybe other institutions that helped or maybe were obstacles in the way. How does this project and the process of working on it stand in relation to structures?
Well, I can see it in a different perspective. One is for sure what it relates to my first answer here was very much how non-institutionalized was the topic itself when I started researching. So in on-site or in the village itself, and that was interesting conversation to start because it was some of shared knowledge but not of shared conversation, I'd say. which, yeah, is an interesting point. On the other hand, there is like a very structured and rigid history, for example, in painting of what an ideal landscape is, and there is a lot of research. And a third way, of course, is the structure where I'm developing the PhD. And I don't know how many of you are planning to apply to PhD arts in the future, but I can say that for me it was an amazing experience, and it developed the way I think and work in so many ways. I'm just really grateful of all the interaction we had.
As you drew the card in this instance, with the idea of it, not it just asking you a question, but you asking it a question. So I would like to come back to that idea, instead of it being in one direction, asking, what are the challenges that you still face in this process in order for it to sort of, be accepted by the institution? Is that an issue here, or not so much? What's the challenge there? To find the form, I suppose.
We spoke about this before, but something I really like to engage with in tarot, and it was also one of the things why we decided to engage with, is how then different images start engaging with one another. And so I think this is a good match.
It's a good match.
So institution and solitude, it's for me something that was very challenging from the beginning. I don't know, maybe because of my background, I don't know. But I struggled to be autonomous, let's say, or to trust my process or trust myself. And this is something I really had to fight to start doing, and that's something that was pushed from this side, and now I feel more comfortable with it. Started trusting a bit more, not always, but mostly, that's it, no? Yeah. The final part?
Go on then.
Ooh, the tower.
The tower. Do we recognise what tower it is?
You're involved again. It's the container.
Yes, the tower of containers.
Oh well, I can talk about this. The tower is construction of beliefs.
Yes.
No?
Well, it's, in a way, it's what we've just talked about as well. It's the challenges and the disruption.
And just to contradict what I said at the beginning, that we would never get into purple. This is full of purple because it's very much in part of what this card is about. It's very much how, in the process of researching, you can let the research merge, stepping a bit aside from being always in the middle, from things to emerge. Like, also kind of, I don't know if loss of control or overthinking, or I think it connects very well with what I was saying about trust as well.
There's also this idea of colliding with something, is there something that your thought and or even your artistic practice collides with? Can you say that? Or or is it more seeking harmony, or does it need to go through a process of disruption in order to find its own form?
Yeah, no, also as a method that I'm using, actually, it's very much about taking things apart and
dissecting them.
I speak of decomposing because that's a term I've been starting to work in the last period, because it's very much also connected with what does it mean to imagine a certain idea in connection to landscape and all the violence and and structure that this brings with.
The notion of composting is implied in the decomposure, right?
Yeah, and something I was very much struggling with, it's also this idea of non-linearity. And while speaking of while I'm writing, I'm trying to find a way or ways to break a linear structure, and then having this possibility of like speaking of composing and decomposing and decomposing and composing, not as one coming before the other one, but more in this circular way of thinking and moving. So going back to the three of them, I think this might very much be, like this.
In constant movement, in constant negotiation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ilaria, thank you. We will have time to engage in all sorts of discussions, maybe at the end after we've listened to or entered into the room of Don Weber. And for that I would like to invite you to move now back to the library. You can follow me. So there is an exhibition on at the moment here in the library, and it may or may not be an instance of artistic research, I don't know. It's not what we're here to talk about today, but of course you may look at it. Because we're here, please make yourself comfortable, you can come in, there are a few chairs. We're here to engage with the work of Don Weber. The figure that we are presented with is a human form dressed in an orange jacket. I don't know if it corresponds to any archetype in the major arcana, but we may ask ourselves, what does it stand for? And maybe
we find out. Right?
Maybe we find out.
Shall I shuffle them?
You should shuffle the cards.
Okay. How about I can split the deck, right?
You can.
And then I can show it to somebody and they can tell me what's happening. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I will hold it up. I don't know which one it is, but somebody can tell me. Is it upside down?
That's good, it's okay. Upside down is upside down.
Upside down, but
You know.
can you read it?
It's the Hierophant. We've had it before. You
Pass.
can, no? Well, why not? No.
Okay.
We don't, there are certain rules in
Okay.
tarot, I mean, you draw a card, you don't say you don't like it and put it back. No. I mean, you can decide not to engage, that's one thing. But experience tells me that it will come back to get you anyway. So, here we have the Hierophant. We even had it upside down.
Oh, yeah.
Which may or may not be of significance. But the Hierophant was the number 5. And we had it in terms. Do you want me to read you what it stood for again? Hang on, I have to open my magical book. I mean, we might have some tarot experts here who have a particular understanding of the Hierophant, but the Hierophant, otherwise known as the Pope, is government, school, institution, education, and I can already see you feeling, addressed. But also professional help, So we ask, how is or was your work supported and welcomed or not by the university and other institutions? And why is this relevant for what it is that you're actually doing or have done? And perhaps as a little anecdote, I might state that this is the one project of the 3 that we're looking at tonight that actually, in terms of its contextualization within the university, is actually accomplished and done and found not wanting.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so this is actually maybe made for me, in a way. Okay.
Well,
So,
welcome.
what a minute.
Welcome.
Yes. Okay, so the notion of institutional support or not, right? Well, I would say institutional unsupport, let's say, is the way that this work actually, the impetus behind it was, in fact, dwelling within, let's say, conflict of and with institutions. So let's say maybe even officialdom. So my work is very much situated in the port of Rotterdam, in the Maasvlakte. And the port of Rotterdam is run by the Port Authority, which I also think is a very telling word. It's the authorities that sort of determine, let's say, such economic power and prowess within the Netherlands. So I was always, let's say, stymied every time I would go out to the port as a photographer, because the camera itself was sort of like a beacon or a signal of noise in the machine. So I was kind of, let's say, like a speck on the radar of disruption. So I was constantly sort of challenged by the port authorities and by the douane, the customs, and by the police, saying, what is it that you're actually doing here? Because I was not, let's say, in the right, so-called right spots of where photographs should be making. So that was kind of maybe the impetus where my own idea of what kind of institution could then I structure in the face of such officialdom. So the idea essentially or basically is really looking at the unofficial, or what other stories are left behind, dropped out, or not even recognized. And is there a way to sort of instigate or to improvise or to allow other sort of voices and stories and possibilities in such a landscape to exist beyond the official, beyond the institutional? So, well, I won't get into it too much because that's the whole point of today. So I hope that that might answer some of the relationship to the institutional, or even, let's say, in my case, to the official. That's how I understand.
Can I just maybe ask in relation to your...
My bureau?
Well, yes, your...
You're probably all wondering why I'm wearing orange and why I have a giant case that says bureau on it. Yeah, so I'm a representative of the Bureau of Operational Landscapes. We are an organization that is interested in, for now, we call it an operational landscape, which is basically massive infrastructures that are sort of beyond scale and size and, let's say, the traditional capacity to sort of understand such an environment. So the idea with the Bureau is that we undergo, I call them missions. So a mission is a sort of foray into a particular operational landscape. And the Port of Rotterdam is just the first operational landscape that the Bureau is dwelling within. So the Bureau also takes on, I guess, a hierophantic sensibility, yet in this case, I also believe that the role of irony, not too much, and humor can also invite people in to share their own experiences within such official landscapes. So hence the Bureau.
Thank you. Please draw another card, or ask someone to draw it for you.
I'd like somebody else to draw a card, so I'm going to put it here. Don't be intimidated by my Bureau.
Can we have a volunteer come
nice,
draw a card for Don?
Can we
Someone's coming?
spread them on the table? There you go. Okay. Let's see. Is that meaningful if it falls on the floor? Everything's meaningful.
It was upside
Tout
down.
est écriture. Which one is it?
Death.
Death. Okay. Yeah. Well, look at the card. Look at the depiction of the card. The card, in this instance, is without any colour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And is it an object that you might relate to?
It's a reef knot.
It's a reef knot.
Yeah.
A rope.
Yeah.
And in the classical tarot, of course, death, there are no negative cards, by the way, right? It's all to do with movement and transformation, and death is the key card of transformation. It stands for breaking through patterns, breaking through habits, breaking through conventions. And so we might ask, and in a way I think you've already answered, what are the instances or registers or the place of metamorphosis here? What is the metamorphosis? And you can choose, where it's directed to. Is it your own metamorphosis? Is it the metamorphosis of the project? Or is it something out in the world that is being addressed by some kind of transformation? But it can also apply to your own, because we're in the context of artistic research and a kind of epistemological development. We might ask, what are the learnings that you were able to accept or let go of in the process of this accomplished work?
Okay. Lots. Let me sort of gather my thoughts. Let's talk about metamorphosis in relationship to the place, the very particular place of the research, but then also my own, let's say, complicity within that place. So a mutual demonstration of metamorphosis. So I, as a photographer, can really only be in situ to understand what it is that I'm doing, or at least what I'm attempting, or what I'm striving for. So without the relationship of my feet on the ground in a particular place, and the wind and the salt, etc., sort of also contaminating or dusting my own body, then I don't know what's sort of happening. So for me, it's not just a metamorphosis of something that I'm looking at, but also entangled with. So in that sense, also the very particular landscape that I'm working in, the Port of Rotterdam, the Maasvlakte container terminal, is also a gigantic, massive sort of form of metamorphosis that refuses to be sort of considered beyond its own image itself. So it's a very strict and specific sort of view. So that's maybe the one idea that I start to think about this question of metamorphosis, and also so thinking photographically in and with and through the very particular sense of place. And then the last part of the question, I think, was also about like my field or my relationship to it, I think. I come from a very traditional photographic background, really thick within conventions and traditions. So as a landscape photographer, what does that mean? It means reproducing static representations that are actually quite beautiful of very specific, let's say, sites and scenes. So making images that are meant to be gazed upon and looked upon. But what I realized when I was in the Port of Rotterdam, that let's talk PhD rhetoric for a second. I considered that like a temporal or an atemporal landscape, a thing that doesn't change. But I was very much interested not just in what a place looks like, but how else can we understand the act of looking. So trying to think through experience, placemaking, sensibility, sensing, or the sensual notion of a place, and then how does that start to, say, defy the conventions that I was raised upon. So I guess then the metamorphosis was the realization that traditions or conventions of landscape photography cannot withstand such contemporary space. So if you would like to read chapter 1 of the dissertation, you can sort of learn about the let's say the architectural, the sort of spatial manifestations that I say have never existed on planet Earth before. So what happens when traditions meet something that has never been experienced before? So there's a sense of collision.
I'd like to just pick up on something that you said almost in passing when you sort of almost apologized for speaking PhD language for a moment. And we all sort of, well, I mean, I felt, oh dear, you know. But the actual serious question is, you know, what is there something in the what you've just called PhD jargon or language or register that has actually changed your way of seeing? Because this would be a question related to the transformation card, right? Or we could also say, you know, it's a common trope that there's a sort of something about the principle or the method of a scientific discourse that sort of kills the phenomenon.
Yes.
And I thought that was a very cool thought for a long time. Now I'm wary of that thought because I'm wary of it being misunderstood as if the scientific discourse is something to be avoided, which we are, you know, which is an ideology we're now facing. And which is an existential, threat to our work. So that's why I would like to frame or reflect back on your question and say, you know, what is of value in this PhD discourse that has transformed your way of being in the world? And we can ask ourselves, all of us, this question, right? It's not about Don Weber necessarily, but there's something about your work that I'd be intrigued to know that has meant that you will not see things as you did before.
I hope not. Yeah. The reason I sort of prefaced that was because much of my 20 plus years in photography has really been dwelling within the local and let's say the public. So moving within, say, site-specific place, so the particularities of the place. And one thing I was always semi-reluctant about in pursuing this research and this PhD is losing sight of that relationship to, say, people, we have the same gaze, we look at each other at the same level. And there are times within that I felt I started to disconnect from that sensibility, and the logic and the argument started to become maybe overly particular. But I also understand then, hence this is kind of where my field kit, my suitcase as field kit comes in, or field kit, yeah, suitcase as field kit, is in the ability to not lose sight of the precision of what a PhD can offer, but the communicative power of something that I've always wanted to pursue with my work. So how can I still look eye to eye but not lose that precision? And I will say there are times in here that I feel that I may have drifted from those abilities to fully communicate. But I also realized, hence again, why the suitcase, this field kit as a beacon, as a haptic repository happened, was because I'm trying to find other ways to communicate.
I'd almost say an oracle, the way you hold on to it and the way you look to it for the answer.
They're in
there's
here.
Some sort of script in there, you know, but there's no text to be seen. I mean, at least there is lots of text to be read, but it's a beautiful image from my perspective. And I wish that we all have something like that to hold on to and to refer to, or to build in the process of becoming the work that we do. But you must draw a third card.
Oh, I guess, okay. I'll take a third card. Let's see. I hope it's one of my favorite drawings, but let's see what happens. I'm going to put it back into my oracle. Let it breathe for a second. It's doing something, I feel it. Can I can't exchange cards, can I?
I'm afraid not. It's not how it works.
Okay, well this time I did do it face up. So here we have the devil. So I have, geez. A death, a hierophant, and a devil.
It's the card number 15. And it's depicted in your own drawing as a snake.
Yeah. I hate snakes. I hate snakes.
I wish I hope there was a camera that's getting this picture of your face and the fear.
Yeah.
You know, death was nothing. But yeah, I agree with you. The devil is worse.
Yeah.
So it's the question of false truths. The idea of self-deception, or even the idea of, in a different reading by Jodorowsky, it would be intensity and fire. The pulsion or passion or talent or creativity. It's also about learning to work or to recognize these. So, you know, one formulation would be or how we formulated it was, what truth, that's my Sussex accent coming out. What truth do you love least about this work? And are there any guilty pleasures to confess?
Mm. So guilty pleasures and which do I like the least?
What truth do you love least about it? Or you could also say, you know, are there negative values and drives that you, or what are the negative values and drives that you have at your disposal that are actually helpful in pushing forward, but maybe problematic in some other way? Or maybe, you know, what did you have to battle to get it done? Because we're interested in that as well. You know, all of us here, I'm imagining, are here with some sort of self-interest as well, you know, because we're battling with something. And here we are, someone who successfully completed the PhD in artistic research. You know, what did you have to overcome, would be one way to put it.
Yeah, I have to close it. Well, I just recently defended, so I'm probably still so much in it that it's impossible to have any sense of clarity. But I did open up my box, and I felt that I really wanted to sort of pull some things out of here. And I made a seagull head, sort of severed. But I was thinking about not just this seagull head in particular, but sort of the situation that the seagull sort of found itself in. So, in the port of Rotterdam, particularly in Maasvlakte, there's, well, I know you guys, so you can take a look at a seagull. But the reason I brought the seagull out was because in Maasvlakte there is, it's the largest seagull colony in all of Europe, so it's quite a massive one. And there's thousands and thousands of seagulls out there that sort of live. And yet on the other side of that seagull, there's a new drinks factory called the Innocent Drinks Factory. It's a new green factory that produces smoothies and such like that. But in order to get there, they had to build a road through this colony. So when you go out there, you're sort of confronted with either seagulls that are living or seagulls that are dead. There can be hundreds of dead sort of seagull carcasses. And I was just sort of maybe thinking kind of metaphorically in terms of my own process. I was a seagull, and at times I was sort of squawking and eating bread, and at the same time also dying, not quite literally, but that sort of maybe balance in the process itself of doing a PhD, which is a very kind of particular thing, which I felt was maybe perpetually always in contest or friction with my desire to be free and intuitive and in place, yet at the same time to try to make some sort of sense of rigor and to be precise with my language and my words and my desires and my directions. So going back to the failed truth, right?
The false truth.
The false truth. That's a really
which is, of course,
question.
already an enigma, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
Maybe the way that I would look at that then would be, as I said before, I started from and within and deeply believing in the conventions of landscape photography. The conventions that have been around for 300 years, and suddenly realize, or not suddenly realizing it, actually quite over a few years, coming to terms with the fact that what I had inherited and learned and studied was a false truth, and that I needed to find a different truth if I was to have some kind of relationship to this very particular landscape.
I can't think of a better note to complete this part of our evening on. May we all recognize the false truths that we carry. Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Can I say one thing?
Of course.
Just, if anybody, I have some swag, so if anybody can come to me later, I have some nice stickers. Perhaps you'd also like a patch, so you can make your own jacket. So feel free to come to me if you would like some swag. So thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for participating so far in this sort of experimental mode of encounter and engagement and discussion. We've seen 3 different instances of a kind of experimental engagement. I'd be interested to know what it was like for the 3 artists. I don't know if you'd like to come to the front, but also an opportunity for the audience in general to ask further questions, both to the individual projects, but also to our dramaturgy of the evening, perhaps, and also to see the cards in their full deck, if you would like. So I'm here to moderate any questions, so if anyone would like to come forward or just to speak up, please feel, don't be shy. Feedback, maybe also critical questions, about being more bewildered than hoped for, or actually finding that this sort of indirect mode of engaging with something can actually also be quite fruitful. I'd be genuinely interested to hear anything you have to say. Holding them out as we hold our hands on the oracle. Gabriel.
So it's probably not yet a question, so I'm just trying and see what happens as I try to announce it. But I was curious of something that came up explicitly a couple of times, or maybe once, but I thought it was implicit in other moments, that had to do with this method. And we were dealing several times with something that maybe had to do with secrecy in the Ilaria came explicitly, but there was something about the process that was quite intimate in what was opening up or pulling from your process. And there's something also about all these series that we bring up as public. We insist that there's something about the nature of artistic research, which is about making something public. And there was some sort of strange threshold I felt that we were navigating today, because we were going into these spaces and there was again something intimate about each of you and each of you these questions. And sometimes it wasn't clear what was happening, I must say. But I find that also at some moments being a very interesting question about this boundary between if there was some particular aspect about getting into this secrecy and what was the public thing, did we make them just public or not, so it's a bit of an opening rather than a question.
Well, it is a question. It is a beautiful question. And I just, before you answer, I'd just like to remind you of the title of this particular instance, which is Sensing Otherwise, right? Sensing Landscape Otherwise. That's all I wanted to sort of as a prologue before,
Well, I just wanted to give a bit of backstage about the conversations we had, also about how the process of doing a PhD makes you exposed in so many ways, and that's something that the cards actually do, because it's we can prepare, but to a certain point, and then there's a lot of improvisation that comes in, and I don't know how you felt, but I think it's also something that makes very honest answers coming out. And I think it was also really intentional to have this trigger of being exposed and being there and the research, but also the person and the process of doing it.
There's the performative moment of thinking in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And trusting that the technology will work, or that you know, the idea will come, or the formulation will not totally misfire. Taking that risk, you know, is something that is probably at odds with a certain kind of academic discourse, where you have the ready-made paper but it's equally oftentimes incomprehensible to the audience, right? So we're sort of, you know, I would find that interesting, this idea that you bring up of something only counting as discourse once it is made public, but at the same time us talking about, in both instances, whether it's conventional academia or this somewhat more playful and slightly arcane kind of proposal, which is to do with, somehow triggering a nerve, touching something that isn't usually said, right? And sharing that impulse.
Well, another thing that we discussed a lot was this threshold between the performativity of the research and what do you answer as a person. So when are you, maybe Dawn, that was something we came up with a lot.
When are you the performer and when are you, say, the artist?
Yeah.
And not that they're mutually exclusive, but at times they have different purposes and different needs. And how to maybe signal the differences between the demands of what each of those have and are. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer?
I'm going to try. And please feel free to laugh because it's funny. But I think for me, and I mean, Alice knows this and Anka too, the two supervisors. But for me currently, I'm really into the idea of meaning making over like absolute truth or resolution. And I feel like this clarity that you're speaking of, for me at least, I would define that as a synthesis or a resolution. Like I did something, and then you have this resolute thing that you could take away, and this is the thing that you're going to put into your pocket. But I think for me, it's more important to focus on how meaning is made within the context of the environment of the performer and of the audience. So if things are not clear, I think that's even better. Because then it does bring up, it forces something out that otherwise wouldn't be touched. This nerve that you're discussing. And I think maybe for me, I think this is the optimal way to make public, make this confusion or this tension or this, obscurity.
Maybe ideally on in moments of it rather than all the time.
To be perfected, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other interventions, questions, comments, needs? Looking around. Because if not, the bar is still open, and we can go into a different slight mode of conversation, maybe in a less sort of focused way. I don't know. Or please feel free to move and come forward and see our cards. I'll show you our little brochure as well. There we go. Thank you to all of the organisers. Thanks to Gabrielle and
just briefly again, thank you.